Hey guys, funny story. I recorded this entire video, and didn't realize until after I'd finished recording that I never turned on my mic. But I do have the audio from my built-in microphone that QuickTime recorded by itself while I was screen recording. So I'm uploading this with that audio. Please forgive that my mic doesn't sound as good as this one does. I'm really sorry about that. But it's like 20 minutes long, and I really don't feel like redoing all that dialogue that I didn't script. So I hope you guys enjoy regardless. Hey everybody, this is Blue Dragon VA, and I'm back with another Fate tier list today. So I'm doing this because the last Fate tier list did really well. For those of you who haven't seen that video, I was ranking the servants of Fate Zero, Fate Apocrypha, and Fate Stay Night. And I got a lot of requests in the comments to do a video about the masters from those three shows. So I'm going to go ahead and rank these guys, because I actually do have some opinions on these characters as well. Just a refresher for people who haven't seen that video, these are being ranked based on the fact that I like how much I like these characters, how well I think they're written, things about them like that. I don't really judge based on their strength because I don't like power scaling, and I don't really think I'm the authority to talk about that stuff anyway. But this is purely based on my opinion here. So let's get right into it. There's not as many characters to rank as there was last time, but I have a bit more to say about some of them than I did the servants. So, first of all, we're starting with the Apocrypha Masters like last time. The first master we're going to rank is Gord. And as a character, I think he's probably D tier for me. I don't think he's flat out garbage. I think there are good elements to his character. I understand the purpose he serves in Apocrypha's narrative. I don't think that his quote-unquote redemption later in the series was all that earned. I think that he sort of just, was an annoying, stupid character everyone hated intentionally in the early arc. And then in the second arc, for some reason, he starts coming around to homunculi being better. Well, not better, I should say, but, equal to human beings in terms of their rights and whatnot. And I don't understand how this transition happened. I know the events that were there to incite it, but I don't feel like narratively it was all that earned. Not enough time was spent with his character. And I personally believe that he was not a very good part of Apocrypha at all. County Cisigo. I am putting him in S tier because he, like Mordred, was one of my favorite parts of Fate Apocrypha. He had a tendency to steal the screen whenever he was on, and I absolutely love him for it. He is bar none the best master character in Apocrypha, which means that this is going to go downhill from here. Fiore is a character I'd probably put... I'm torn between C and B. I am going to put her in... this is actually really hard. Because Fiore does some good stuff in Apocrypha, but at the same time, her character does feel very wooden. I don't know, she has some moments of personality. I really like her interactions with Kyrie, so I'm going to probably put her in B tier. I think Fiore had a lot of potential, but overall just wasn't as well explored as she could have been. But there are some awesome things about her. I love the idea of her wheelchair converting into a mech suit. It's a really interesting way to play off of how she's persevered as a mage and attempted to create a mystic code that suits her in spite of her disability. I think she's really good and strong as a character, strong in the narrative sense. And I really do admire what they tried. It's just that I think that she was unfortunately the victim of a little bit of sloppy writing. And I'm going to skip over him real quick and talk about Callus the same way. I think that Callus is another character I like a lot, who, like his sister, experienced a little bit of narrative rushing and not enough time spent with his character, which is really weird because he has the screen time for it. But I swear the majority of the time that Callus is on screen, he's just stating what's happening around him. And he's not actually, developing his own character. His moments with Berserker tend to be pretty good. Berserker, I mean Fran. And his moments with Fiore tend to be pretty well written. I do think that he had some really great development in the Jack arc, and I do appreciate where his character ended up, but I think it might have been a little bit rushed. I'm putting him right there with Fiore because I think that both of them suffered from this problem at least a little bit. Sieg, I am putting in C tier. I'm putting him in C because I think that Sieg does have some interesting aspects to his character. I think that there was a structure there that could have very easily worked to make him a good character. But Apocrypha does not deliver on that even a little bit. And that's very disappointing for me, because you think about his character and the concept of it. He's a homunculus who gets a dragon heart, the ability to turn into a servant by using a command seal, who gets his own servant that he can also use those command seals on, turning into one of my favorite servants, Siegfried, for that matter. And they somehow took that amazing concept and made him boring. I don't know how that happens. It's just he's such an interesting idea for a character. He has so many layers to his ideas, but then in the show he's so wooden. He's so boring, and I feel like it sort of cancels out the unnaturally good and the unnaturally bad, and he just sort of ends up neutral for me. Shiro, I already talked about in my servants video, but I feel the same way about him as a master that I do as a servant. I don't think he really earned his antagonist role, and I think that he was mainly put there because the show needed an antagonist. I genuinely do believe that he should have been developed more as a person, and not necessarily just as the villain. Reika, on the other hand, I would probably put in B tier. I don't love her as a character, but I really have no reason to dislike her. I think she's actually a pretty good idea, and again, I wish the anime disclosed more of what her I don't know if they talked about it in the manga, but I know in the light novel they discuss it. Discussed more of how she became involved in the Grail War, because she's a very interesting character. Reika's actually very, very well written in the novels, and it disappoints me that so much of her arc was scrapped because they couldn't be bothered to explain how she came into possession of Jack in the first place. But moving beyond that, Salonika is the worst. I really hate Salonika. She is my least favorite character in Fate Apocrypha. You want to know why I know her name is Salonika? Because I Googled it. I don't remember them ever saying her name once in the entire show. And I have watched that series so many times. I have to rewatch the episodes in order to write the scripts. So you'd think out of anyone who could notice it, it would be me. But I don't remember them ever saying her name in the show. And that's disgusting writing to me. That's awful. That's garbage. And if you ask me, this character belongs in the bottom tier. Roche is not far ahead of Salonika. Because again, he's not an extremely interesting character. He doesn't have a lot going on, and before he has a chance to deliver on any of it, he is unceremoniously killed off by a villain who doesn't even earn his spot as the antagonist of that arc. Because Evisa Braun's just not a very compelling antagonist in the first place. I don't think that he really does enough of anything, and he comes off very generic, boring, and one-note because of it. I think that Roche is a character that really did not do anything of significance in Fate Apocrypha. I don't believe we were ever even shown the golems that Roche can make, unless some of those weren't Evisa Brons and some of them were Roche's. But I don't know if the novels expand on him or not, because I haven't heard anyone talk about that before. I certainly do not like Roche as he appears in the anime. Darnik, I'm going to put, again, in C tier, because he's not a particularly original villain. He wants immortality, and he's very evil, and that's basically as much as we gain about insights on his personality. I do think he has a bit of a presence in the show for a little bit, but it doesn't help that he takes over Dracula in one of the most, he takes over Dracula in one of the most well, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very similar to me to the scene where Salonika is scolding Astolfo before she gets her head cut off, because there's so much yelling. There's so much dialogue that is all being screamed at the same pace. And it feels like the scene goes on forever. And I really don't think that, aside from that, which is not necessarily a positive memory, Darnik left all that impressive of an impression on me. I think his fashion sense is okay. but I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head what offensive magecraft he uses, and that's a bad sign. So there, we've rated all the Apocrypha Masters, and I'm not including the Red Masters who never showed up, because to me those characters don't exist. I don't even know why they're in the show. I'm not counting Avisabron either, because Spartacus did not count as his servant Fight Me. As for the Fate Zero characters, Kiritsugu, S tier. Kiritsugu is a fantastic character for many of the same reasons Shiro is. He's just taken a different direction. I haven't talked about him as much, because I don't really have as personal an attachment to Kiritsugu as I do to Shiro. But at the same time, I think that Kiritsugu is a fantastically crafted character. And I think that especially with the other insights we get to him through Fate Heaven's Feel and through his scenes in the early parts of Unlimited Blade Works, we really do get a better picture of how Kiritsugu evolves. And I also love the additions to him we get in Oath Under Snow. But Fate Zero is already a fantastic vehicle for exploring Kiritsugu's character. And I genuinely think he's one of the best fleshed out Fate protagonists in the franchise. With relatively short time to accomplish that. Kadia, I am putting in A tier, but not for the reasons that a lot of you are going to think. Kadia, in my opinion, is not a good man who gets corrupted. He is an entitled man who tries to get himself involved in a situation he shouldn't be messing with. He is a man who, yes, tries to do something that is by the books heroic, but Kadia ends up doing it in a way that causes more harm than good. He is a tragic character in the fact that his flaw is unwavering arrogance as to what he is capable of. And because of that, he ends up hurting Sakura and Rin more than he intended to. He hurts them worse than he would have than he would have helped them. And that's honestly just I think very emblematic of the major problem his character encounters. I think that he's a very well-written character, don't get me wrong, but he's not a good person. Or at the very least, he may be a good person, but the actions he takes in Fate Zero are not black and white good or even for the greater good. He's doing things very selfishly, and I think a lot of people fail to realize that. Kenneth is a character that I personally think is fairly well written. I think he's insufferable, which is part of the intent, but I do think that he is a good character. I don't think he's a fantastic character. I don't love him. I don't hate him. But I am willing to acknowledge that he's above average in terms of writing. Kirei, just like Kiritsugu, I'm putting him in S tier. I think that Kirei is a very well fleshed out character in both Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero, and spoiler alert, for Heaven's Feel and Unlimited Blade Works at least, I'm not changing his ranking at all. Or at least for Heaven's Feel, certainly not. But yeah, I love Kirei. I don't like him as much as I like Kiritsugu, but I still think that he's a fantastic character. Tokiomi, I am going to put in A tier. And part of the reason I like Tokiomi so much is because I love the insight he gives us to the way that mages think. Fate Stay Night and Fate Apocrypha both do establish a lot of stuff about the Clock Tower, but they do so in ways that really don't show us the way that mages think. They do it in ways that tell us. And Tokiomi, I think, is a perfect example of the way that Clock Tower mages think. I think that him separating his daughters and giving one of them to a person who is, unbeknownst to him, completely bonkers, that really shows how recklessly dedicated to the bloodline and how recklessly dedicated to finding the root that the mages involved with stuff like this really are. I think it's a fantastic way to flesh out his character. I think that it's a fantastic way to world build by fleshing out a character. I don't love him because I don't think his personality is really all that likable, but I certainly do think that Tokiomi is a fantastic fit for the world of Fate Zero. Waver is a character who I adore. I am putting him right up there in A tier next to Kadia and Tokiomi, because Waver is another character who, just by his very nature, fleshes out the world of Fate and fleshes out the environment of the Clock Tower. There's a lot more stuff in Case Files that I love in regards to the way his character evolves, but Fate Zero, I think, is the best example of how a character like this helps to flesh out the world. Um, and you see a bit more of this in Shinji as well, but Waver is a good example of the kind of character who is underestimated exclusively because he doesn't fit in the mage world. And the fact that he doesn't fit in the mage world requires the show to flesh out the mage world so it's clear why he doesn't. And I appreciate the function he serves in the story as well as the direction his character is taken. Fate Zero has a lot of characters like this, and I really, really do love it. Ryunosuke, I didn't make a jail tier this time, did I? No. Can I make a Can I make a jail tier? Is there? Hold on. Oh no, I can't. Okay, if there was a jail tier, Ryunosuke would be going there. I think that he's like, in terms of writing, probably somewhere in like a B or an A. I do think he's a really well written character. I'm gonna put him in B just because I think he fits better next to Kenneth than he does to Wafer. I just feel, I know she's not technically a master. I'm putting her on here because she did serve as a false master. And I think that I do want to talk a little bit about her as well. Iris Veal is a very, very interesting character to me. Because despite the fact that she is a relatively one-note personality, it's done so deliberately. She is a flat character, not a changing character. She is there to develop Kiritsugu, and I think that's really, really cool. I think that Iris Veal is also just a wonderfully sweet character in the story, and I like the way that she affects the dynamics between Kiritsugu and Saber. I love how she creates a bridge between the two of them, so she can act as sort of like a middle ground. I think it's a fantastic function in the story, and she is a likable person as well as that, which makes it all the better. So Iris Veal, I'm going to put right up there with Waver as an A tier character. Zoken Mato. Technically, this is a Fate Stay Night character as well as a Fate Zero character. Again, he wasn't a master in Fate Zero, but he was very closely working alongside Karia. I think that Zoken's a very interesting character, and especially with the insights we get about him in Heaven's Feel. Particularly, I love what they did with him in Part 2. I think that Zoken is genuinely a very, very good character. And I think that he really helps to flesh out the Mages Association and the way that the magic has evolved throughout the years in a very similar way that Tokiomi does. So I think that he at least belongs in B tier, if not in A. My ranking may change when Part 3 comes out because I wasn't as huge a fan of the visual novel as I have been of these movies. But for now, I'll at least put him in B. I think he's an above-average villain. Rin Tosuka is A tier. If she could be between A and S, she would be. I think that Rin Tosuka is a very fun character to watch, and she's also a best girl. But at the same time, I think a lot of the reason I like her is because she's attached to Unlimited Blade Works, which is my personal most attached route of Fate. And I really, really enjoy that. But I will still put her in A tier just because I do think she's a fantastically crafted character. I love her dynamic with Shiro, and some of the scenes she has in Unlimited Blade Works are just my favorite. I love how Ufotable reimagined her design as well, because with the new art style change, she just translates so well. And I really do appreciate that. Shiro Emiya is an S tier character to me. For the exact same reasons as Archer is, really. I have an image of Heaven's Feel Shiro here, but it's really any of the three of them could function this exact purpose. Maybe Fate route Shiro would be like lower, but I do think that in general, Fate, just any version of Shiro could be an S tier for me. Ilya, tough call between A and B. I am going to put her. See, here's the thing. I love how Ilya is a branch between Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero. I really do appreciate that. But there are parts of her character I'm not super fond of, or parts that I think should have been explored more. I definitely don't like the way that she is used as lollybait in one scene of UBW. I'm glad they haven't replicated that before or since. But I'll put her in A. For now, I'll put her in A. I think that she's definitely a good character. I don't think she's fantastic. I'm glad she doesn't have her own route because I don't think she really would be enough to explore. But I think she's definitely a good character, and I appreciate that she's not overexplored because there is some subtlety that comes to just being able to fill in the gaps on your own. Um, Medea is, I think I put her in B tier in the servants, so I'm going to put her in B tier for the masters as well. I don't love her. I don't dislike her. I do like her. I just think she's not particularly impression making to me. Um, Soichiro, I'm going to put in B tier for the same reasons. I like how some of his themes are written, but at the same time, I feel like they're infinitely better explored through Kirei. So his character feels a little bit redundant to me because it just feels like if Kirei were a school teacher, and I'm not sure how much I like that. Shinji is garbage. Sakura is probably, yeah, she's A tier. I don't think she's S, but Sakura is definitely an interesting case study on abuse and on the ways that affects our minds. I do appreciate that she is as sympathetically written as she is, and I do appreciate that there is a way for us to not blame her for all the problems that are caused in the Heavensfield route indirectly because of things she does. Because part 3 is not out yet, I'm not going to spoil anything. But I will say that Sakura has some very interesting character evolutions throughout the Heavensfield trilogy, and it's interesting to see a character slip so thoroughly into what she becomes, despite the polar opposite that is her normal persona. Um, I once heard someone describe her as a yandere. I wouldn't, because I don't personally think that's what her character was meant to create. Or at the very least, I don't think it's what her character should be taken as. I think she's more of an exploration of what it would take to reach the like depths of madness that someone like Kirei could never even hope to achieve. Sort of like the polar opposite of what Unlimited Blade Works Shiro became. Instead of an organized force of pure justice, she became a chaotic mess of unintentional evil. And I think that's a really, really, really interesting way to juxtapose against Shiro. So I really do like Sakura. She's one of my favorite characters in Stay Night. Um, you may notice I have Kirei on here again. Uh, and that's because this Kirei goes in D tier. And I'm saying that because you know what I'm talking about if you remember the scenes in Stay Night where Kirei does nothing. In the Fate route especially, or at least in the Dean version of it. I again, it's they're not necessarily the same. But he just stands there and throws some Grail mud at Shiro. He could be doing any number. He could be boxing the fucker. But no, he throws some Grail mud at him. And because of that, he gets his butt beat by a Japanese high schooler. And I think he kind of deserved that, based on how arrogantly he was fighting. I think that Kirei sort of became a shell of his former self in a couple of the Stay Night routes. He had some good scenes in Limited Blade Works, and I do adore him in Heavensfield. But in the Fate route and in Unlimited Blade Works, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I think UBW he's better than he was in Fate, but in Heavensfield he's certainly better than either of the other two routes. So there you go. That's my Fate Master tier list. This is subject to change, especially as I learn more about some of these characters and see more of Heavensfield animated. But for now, this is the verdict I've reached. I hope you guys agree with it. If you don't, that's fine. Comment and let me know what you guys would rank these characters. This tier list will be linked in the description, so if you want to make your own, feel free. So with that being said, I've been Blue Jock VA, and thank you for watching.